Now to introduce our presenter for tonight's lecture. Mary Anne Borge is a naturalist, photographer, author, and educator. A naturalist at Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve in New Hope, PA since 2006. She is a Pennsylvania Master Naturalist and the associate editor of Butterfly Gardener magazine. She is also the team leader for Lambertville Goes Wild, a volunteer group whose efforts successfully led to the National Wildlife Federation's certification of Lambertville, New Jersey, as a community wildlife habitat. At her blog, thenaturalweb.org, Mary Anne writes about and, with her photography, illustrates the importance of native plants to all life on Earth. We are so excited to have Mary Anne with us tonight, and at this point, I will turn things over to her to get us started. Hi, Mary Anne.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me to speak to your group.
Yes.
I'm excited to do that. So Amy explained that some of the things that I do, I have been a naturalist at Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve for a number of years, more than I care to count. And I really enjoy that. But the people that come to the preserve are people that are already sort of predisposed to be interested in native plants. And that wasn't enough for me. So I decided I needed to do something to spread the word beyond the Wildflower Preserve. And I initiated some things here in Lambertville, where I live, Lambertville, New Jersey. So the topic for today is what I did and how you guys can do the same kind of thing, should you choose to do that. So native plants, spreading the word beyond the choir. And the photo that you're looking at here is actually one of our first planting projects. This took place in, I think, 2019 in one of our parks in town. It was actually a vacant lot, and this was the first thing that we did to turn it into something more than that. So what are native plants, and why am I so passionate about making sure that people know about them and try to use them? Native plants are plants that are indigenous to the area in which they're found and in which they have evolved over thousands of years together with the animals that are also in that same ecosystem. So they're pretty important things. They're essential to all the life in the ecosystem in which they evolved. Plants and animals have developed these interdependencies over many thousands of years. Probably the most famous is the dependency of monarch butterflies on the milkweeds. Without milkweeds, we would not have monarch butterflies. That's a pretty well-known thing now, but not everybody is aware of it. And some people, and even some of you in the audience, may think that monarch butterflies can only drink nectar from milkweed plants. Nope, that's not it. Monarchs are not that picky about where they drink their nectar. It's the caterpillars. What a lot of people don't realize is that butterflies are not butterflies for their entire lives. They start life as an egg, the caterpillar hatches from the egg, eats a lot, eventually evolves into a pupa and a chrysalis, and then the butterfly emerges. During two of those life cycle stages, the butterfly eats. It's the adult butterfly and the caterpillar. And the thing is that during those two life cycle stages, they have quite different diets. And so you have to make sure that you have food for both the adult and the caterpillar, the larval stage. So what's interesting is that monarchs are just one example of that dependency. There are so many dependencies. Most butterflies and moths, for example, are dependent on a small number of closely related species. I'm going to go through just a few examples of native plants and a little bit about their importance to the environment, to the animals in the environment in which they're found, in which they've evolved. If we just look at oak trees, the oaks support over 500 species of butterfly and moth caterpillars, as well as many other insect species. They're also, the butterfly that we see up in the corner there is a juvenile dusky wing. It's one of the over 500 species of butterflies and moths that use oaks trees as their caterpillar food, that depend on oaks. Oaks, in addition to being hosts for caterpillars and other insects, also produce acorns that are food for lots of birds and mammals. The insects on the trees are really important sources of food for birds. So they're just hugely important for the ecosystem. There are lots of other insect species that use oaks. The oaks are kind of well known as having a lot of galls. They actually host a lot of wasps that are beneficial species to help keep other species in the ecosystem in check. We have an example of a gall in the upper right here that's being visited by an ant. The gall is actually the plant's reaction to being used as a source of food and shelter by an insect. So there's actually a wasp developing in that gall. And to make it even more interesting, the gall is producing nectar that the ant is drinking. So it actually lures other insects to come and protect the tree. So there's just a tremendously busy ecosystem going on with oak trees. Why should we use native plants? Another example is blueberries. I mean, who doesn't like blueberries? But not only people, but lots of animals like blueberries as well. There are over almost 300 species of butterflies and moths that use the genus Vaccinium, of which blueberries are a part, as their caterpillar food plants. And interestingly, the blueberries, which of course are a good source of food for humans, are actually best pollinated by some of our native bees. I always think of honeybees as the migrant workers of the insect world. And many farmers use honeybees. They're shipped from farm to farm. They're kind of forced to eat food from only a closely related group of plants, and it may not be the healthiest thing for them. Interestingly, honeybees are not the best, most efficient pollinator for some of our food crops like blueberries, cranberries, eggplants, tomatoes. All of those plants are best pollinated by our native bees who have the athletic ability to do something called buzz pollination or sonication. This is a situation or a skill where the bee is able to cling to the flower, vibrate their wing muscles without moving their wings, which sets up enough of a vibration to have the pollen dust out onto the underside of the bee. The bee then takes that pollen from flower to flower. Several of our native bee species are able to do this, but honeybees cannot. So they're actually not the best pollinators for some of our food crops. So having native plants is important to have our native insects, and our native insects are really helpful to pollinate our agricultural crops. There are also studies that have shown that if you have hedgerows of native plants around agricultural fields, that will bring in our native pollinators, and they'll improve your success rate with pollination of agricultural crops. So another example is the black walnut. I sometimes like to highlight plants that aren't necessarily showy or flashy, but black walnuts are really one of the best plants, one of the best trees for removing pollutants from the atmosphere. The allegic acid in nuts and the leaves help remove carcinogenic hydrocarbons from the air. So it helps to purify our atmosphere. Also, the nutrients in the nuts are actually very beneficial. They're good for healthy brain development, which I don't know about you, but I feel like I can always use that. They help prevent a number of diseases, and they have as much protein as an equal weight of beef. So they're really valuable. Black walnuts, the trees, the wood can be used to make furniture, and the hulls have been used to make a dye. So they really provide a lot of services. So why are native plants important? Well, there's some things that have happened recently that are not so good. You may have heard reports that bird populations have declined significantly in about the last 50 or so years. Almost 30% the bird populations have declined. During that same time, the insect populations have also been declining. Insects are a really important source of food for birds, caterpillars in particular, but insects in general. When you see birds foraging on the ground, turning over leaves, they're looking for insects. They might also be looking for seeds or nuts, but they're looking for insects. If you see birds browsing the branches of the trees outside, they're looking for insects. Insects are an essential source of food for birds and other animals as well. So if our insect population is declining, that means other animals are going to be declining as well, including our bird species. Just a few examples of studies that have shown these insect declines are that in Germany, over a 25-year period in one area of Germany, there was a 76% decline in insects. There was a study published in Science magazine about more than 10 years ago that showed a 40% decline worldwide of insect species. There was just recently, just a couple of months ago, there was a study published that looked at data from the year 2000 to 2020. And the result was that it showed that overall, the North American butterflies had declined about 22% just in that 20-year period. The likely reasons for these declines are habitat loss, pesticides, and warming temperatures. During this same 50 or so year period, the human population has doubled. I kind of think there might be a relationship here. So I think humans as a species have contributed to these problems. And fortunately, we're all in a position to help reverse this trend. One of the most important things you can do is to use native plants. This is a photo of what my garden looks like outside my front door. It's actually a few years old and it's fuller now even than it was then. And I live in a homeowners association. I live in a townhouse development, and yet I'm able to use native plants in my beds outside. So if I can do it, we can all do it. So we want to use native plants and encourage others to do the same. How are we going to do that? One is by example, the things that we plant in our own gardens. But as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm just totally sold on native plants. It's really so important to support the wildlife that we all depend on to have native plants. And I love doing work as a naturalist at Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve. I love teaching the classes, but like I said, it really wasn't enough. I wanted to spread the word beyond the fence of Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve. So I decided to initiate an effort in my hometown where I live right now, Lambertville, New Jersey, to get the community certified as a community wildlife habitat through the National Wildlife Federation, which is just one means of spreading the word. But to try to have a sort of a community goal to reach, I think is a really valuable and important thing to do. It gives you a platform from which you can give people information that they need to make better decisions about their gardening practices. So I initiated Lambertville Goes Wild with the help of some friends. I chose the National Wildlife Federation Community Wildlife Habitat Program, but there are other options out there too. I like this particular program because it didn't focus on any one species. I mean, there are programs for monarchs, for example. There's sort of an additional program that the National Wildlife Federation supports called the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. There's a Monarch Way Station. The Xerces Society has the Bee City effort. All of these are great. I like the National Wildlife Federation Community Wildlife Habitat Program because it embraces all wildlife. And I figure that all wildlife is really important. And also you're more likely to touch a broader audience. Not everybody is going to like bees. Most people like butterflies. A lot of people like birds. So if you're targeting wildlife in general, to me, that was a win-win. But any of these are great thing to do. There's the Homegrown National Park program that partners with Doug Tallamy, who's an important figure in the native plant movement. You can do an effort to have individuals certify their gardens with the North American Butterfly Association. Any of these would be a great thing to do, but pick a goal for your community, and that's a goal that you can all work to and use as the platform for teaching people. You have to recruit a team. It's really difficult for one person to do this all by themselves. So in Lambertville, we did recruit a team. So it's a small team. Typically, we've had about 4 people. We've had other people come and go, but there's been sort of a core group of people. Good attributes for the team to have are that they know many people in town. One of our team members, that's her primary skill, is that she's just really a people person, and she knows everyone in town, and she always knows who to go to for things. So she's a great resource. People that know native plants are essential to the team. Not everyone has to know native plants really well, but they have to be interested in them. And there have to be at least some team members who are sort of very well versed in native plants. You need to have good communication skills so you can communicate your goals, you can communicate how people can help reach those goals. You need to have good administrative skills so that you can keep track of all your efforts, and you also need to, if you're doing something like the National Wildlife Federation certification, you need to keep track of what you've done in order to do the certification. You have to do reports, not onerous, but there are some reporting requirements. You need to be a team player because you're going to work as a team. Everybody's going to bring different skills to the table. Again, you need to be good at making connections, either with other people in town, with people outside of your town that have resources that you can kind of trade with each other. You need to be good at making connections, sometimes to get grants. There are a lot of things that go into this. And you want to be able to recruit and work with other partners. Our group, Lambertville Goes Wild, is what we named it. And we did partner with other groups in town. It was strictly a volunteer group, not like a blessed commission within the town, but we worked with the other commissions in the town, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. You need to define your goals. Our goals were to increase awareness of the importance of native plants for all life, and to help people, by doing that, to help people make better choices for gardening. I think most people want to make good choices. Most people want to support the environment. They want to support other animals, the insects and birds that we all share a space with. Often, you don't know how. So it's just a matter of getting the word out. Most of us were raised without really even knowing that there was a difference between native plants and non-native plants and what the importance might be. So it's just a matter of getting the information out there. We wanted to certify Lambertville as a community wildlife habitat through the National Wildlife Federation. That was the goal we chose. It was something that the community could all work together to do. We're a relatively small community. We have less than 4,000 residents. And for this particular program that we chose, based on the size of your community, the number of people that live there, you are given a goal to meet by the National Wildlife Federation in order to be certified, which is kind of good. So if you choose this program, there's a goal, some goals already set for you. We had to earn 100 points by certifying a combination of spaces. They could be private properties, each of which is worth 1 point. We had to certify at least 2 public spaces or gardens, each of which is worth 3 points, and we had to do at least 1 school, each of which is worth 5 points. The certification requirements are not onerous. You have to provide food for animals. That's pretty easy, especially if you're choosing native plants. You want to provide nectar plants. You probably want to provide caterpillar food plants. You want to provide, those things will provide food for other animals, including birds. You may also want to provide plants that produce fruits or seeds that are delectable to birds and other animals as well. Water is really important. In these hot summer days, I love watching the birds in our bird bath out the windows. They're just great. Catbirds especially are very clean, tidy birds, and they just love to take their baths. But it's essential to have water on these hot days. We've fortunately been having some rain, so it's not quite as dry as it is sometimes. But birds and other animals, even insects, need to have water. You need to have cover, which can be pretty much any kind of plants. The plants will be providing cover for insects, probably for birds. Birds may also need trees and shrubs for cover. Those are good sources. They're also, all of those things are places to raise young birds, young insects. And you want to use sustainable gardening practices. And by that, I mean, it's mostly don'ts. It's mostly stop doing things. Don't use pesticides. Don't use herbicides. Those are really important things to not do. So we named our project Lambertville Goes Wild. We had sort of a brainstorming session, and this is what we came up with. And this is our logo, Lambertville Goes Wild. And you need to have a mission statement. Ours is to enhance Lambertville's natural environment for all, large and small, through community education and engagement and promoting wildlife habitat. So again, we started out as just a group of volunteers. We had no official sanction from the city, but we needed to get that. We needed to have support from the city. So our first step was to go to our environmental commission. I think the equivalent of that in Pennsylvania is the Environmental Advisory Board, pretty much the same kind of thing. So we went to the Environmental Commission, told them about what we wanted to do and what we were doing, asked them if they would partner with us. They readily agreed. That one was easy. We needed to get a formal resolution of support from the city council and the mayor. We didn't really have a lot of trouble with that either. The Environmental Commission supported us in that. We went together to our governing body and really pretty readily got that support. We wanted them to pony up some money, to put their money where their mouths was, to show that they were serious about this. And by they, I mean the governing body, the mayor and city council. We're not talking huge bucks here, but we wanted the city to pay for the application fee for certification, which was $99. We thought it was important for the city to do that, to, again, say, yes, we're committed to this. So we're actually willing to spend the $99. And it was $20 for each of the certification of 2 public sites, which we were able to do. We were asking for help maintaining city habitats. Again, sometimes that's don't do something. The city had been using some chemicals on the lawns. They've stopped doing that. No chemicals are used on the lawns. I'll tell you a little bit about some of the gardens as we go forward. And it's actually the Parks and Rec Commission and a group of volunteers that we have who's maintaining most of the city's habitats that we've created. We've actually planted a number of gardens in town. We initiated this effort actually in 2017, was when we began. And since then, we've actually planted several gardens. And we've been able to maintain them with the help of many volunteers. We partner with the city to promote the events that we offer and the message that we have. We do occasionally need to use the city facilities to offer programs. The city's been very generous and cooperative about doing that. And we do use city facilities for things like native plant sales and other events that we have. So the city, I have to say, we really didn't have any trouble getting commitment, an ongoing commitment from the city to support this effort. In order to persuade the city in the first place, it seemed important to try to define what would be in it for Lambertville as a community. One thing is that you can earn points through an organization called Sustainable Jersey, who offers grants to do various projects. And we've actually earned points for our certification for Sustainable Jersey. There are different levels of certification, Sustainable Jersey certification that communities can have. And we've also been lucky enough to get at least 3 grants from them over the last few years, which is great. doing this, making a community effort to certify your community as wildlife friendly, whatever method you choose to do that, is just good publicity. It's a good thing to do, and letting people know about it is good publicity for your city. It's oops, sorry. It's always embarrassing when the instructor forgets to turn their phone off. Anyway, it's good for businesses. It's good for your property values. There are studies that show that homes near natural areas and that have native plants, it actually increases your property value. It's good for tourism. So all of those things are really beneficial to the city. Interestingly, by doing some of the using some of the practices or lack of work that people have been doing for years, you can actually save money and time through sustainable practices. Like I said, some things are stop doing things. If you're using pesticides, if you're using herbicides, if you're using fertilizers on your lawn, stop doing that. So it's less work for you, it's less expense, and it's less toxins going into the environment. So as a result, you're providing a healthier environment, better air and water quality. The more plants you put in the ground, the more pollutants are getting removed from both the air and the water. So it's just results in a healthier environment. You may or may not be familiar with where I live, but Lambertville is a town right on the Delaware River. It's a small town that is surrounded by creeks on three sides, and above those creeks are hillsides. I live on one of the hillsides. I'm lucky, but Lambertville is really subject to flooding, both from the Delaware River and from flash flooding from the hillsides. So it's important to us to make sure that we're doing things in a sustainable way. Interestingly, the things that we do to help wildlife help humans also. Again, the more plants you put in the ground, the more roots there are in the ground, the more able that ground is to absorb storm water. And every little bit helps to make your town more resilient to the weather extremes and the climate extremes that we're all experiencing. So all of this, and you're increasing habitat for all the wildlife that we live with, that has just as much right to be here as we do, and that we depend on them to pollinate our food crops. You want to get your message out, issue a press release to announce your project once you've gotten the commitment that you need to get started. Make sure you do use electronic communication as well through your social media platforms of choice. Develop a website that includes information about your project and resources that you can offer to people, where to buy native plants, for example, or how people can learn more. You can use it to promote the events that you're offering. You might secure an article in your local media about your project. Like in the news media or a radio or TV program or public service announcement. You might want to write a regular column or blog about what you're doing that might be picked up by a news media, or that you're just promoting yourself, or that you're promoting through your community's newsletters, for example. Maybe you can hold a garden tour that features certified habitats or gardens that use native plants. You might consider something like Facebook Live events. We've done most of these things. Offer educational programs. A few of the programs that we've offered are listed here. We've been able to use, again, our city facilities to offer these programs. It's been great. And we've had pretty good turnouts for the most part. I will say that COVID kind of upended things in terms of in-person presentations, but we're trying to get back to more in-person presentations too. You want to get the plants in. So it's helpful to create a demonstration garden at a public site and to have educational signs so people know what they're looking at. There may be grants available to help you to do this. You want to be able to partner with other groups in your municipality. Our environmental commission has been an invaluable partner all along. I infiltrated the Parks and Rec Commission, so the parks have easily become a place where we can create gardens, and we have volunteers that help us to maintain them. And they're extremely valuable for both the planting, which I will say it's easier to get volunteers to plant than to weed, but we have volunteers for both. It's as if you choose something like National Wildlife Federation, or if you don't, it's great to have school gardens. You want to have educational signs and interpretive materials so the kids and their parents and the teachers know what these plants are and why they're important. You need at least one partner from the school, one teacher partner, or one liaison from the school, whoever the school defines that role. It's really helpful to have support from the principal. When we did the school garden at the elementary school in Lambertville, the principal insisted that the kids needed to plant the plants. And we had one grade come out at a time. This is an example of one of the grades to do the planting, and the kids loved it. I thought the sixth graders were going to be too cool to do it, but they weren't. They loved it, and they said, "Don't you have anything more for us to plant?" So really, it's so helpful to get everybody engaged. You could have a Plant to See project, also Earth Day projects and events. We've been pretty successful holding native plant sales. We've typically done it twice a year ever since we began this process. I think we had our first one in the fall of 2017. And since then, we've had them twice a year. This year, we're having 3 special occasions. Try to engage local native plant nurseries to come to your site, to your city, to sell their plants. Consider having a chapter of your local native plant society, your state's native plant society, a local chapter represented there, maybe master gardeners if they also are on board with the whole native plant thing. And there's a lot of emphasis on native plants in Pennsylvania if you in the audience are from Pennsylvania. So I think there's a lot of resources that you can tap into and partner with. Your school, your library, our library has been an essential partner to us. They're also a location that we're able to use for some of our presentations and events. You could think about a native plant seed giveaway or exchange. All those things are possible activities. You can do stream cleanups, tree plantings. For a while in New Jersey, after Hurricane Sandy, the New Jersey and the Arbor Day Foundation were partnering to give away tree seedlings. So for about 5 years, we were able to participate in that. We've got a couple of other tree planting activities so that we're trying to get on the table for this year. We've partnered with a local organization, the Sauerland Conservancy, to plant trees along our nature trail. So they've been an invaluable partner. You can do invasive species removal as an activity to teach people and to just make your community healthier. We have some volunteers who have been great for this. We have not had an opportunity for a native plant rescue, but maybe you do. And what I'm talking about here is a situation where, maybe there's a property that's about to be developed, but there's some great native plants there. You can get permission to try to rescue them and put them in a place where they can continue to survive and thrive. You might do trail cleanups, have family nature events, nature hike, for example. And try to work with local nurseries to label and provide native plants. Make sure people know which plants are native, which plants are not, which plants are cultivars, which plants are straight species. Try to get them to stop selling plants that have been treated with pesticides, because if you are putting out plants treated with pesticides, you're defeating your whole purpose. Review and update your town's ordinances. If you have a shade tree ordinance or a street tree ordinance, make sure that the recommended trees are native trees. If you have a landscape ordinance, make sure that native plants are being promoted. We did that in Lambertville. be careful of weed ordinances. There are some communities, Lambertville is not one of them, but there are some communities that have ordinances that require that your outside spaces, particularly in front of your home, I don't want to call them lawns because they might not be, can't be higher than a certain height, say a foot or whatever. Those can be very negative, they can be stumbling blocks to actually replace lawn with native plants, which is a really good and important thing to do. So if you have such an ordinance that says anything over 12 inches in front of your house is a weed, work to get that ordinance removed or changed. Try to advocate for state laws that ban the sale of non-native invasive plants. Try to get your state to use native plants on state property and roadsides, and get them to ban the sale of toxic pesticides and herbicides. I think we're all still working on that. Make sure you partner with others. You know, again, our first partner, and they've continued to be great partners for us, is our Environmental Commission. For Pennsylvania communities, I believe that's your Environmental Advisory Board. If you have a green team in New Jersey, we have something called a green team. Get them to partner with you. I'm actually part of the green team. I'm currently the chair of Parks and Rec, which makes it extremely easy for me to partner with the Parks and Rec Commission. And again, we've been doing a lot of good things, trying to plant native plant gardens in the parks. And we have more on the planning board. Your Shade Tree Commission. We actually work with our Shade Tree Commission to update their ordinance to recommend, and their list of recommended plants, to make sure that it was primarily native plants that were recommended. Work with your other local municipalities. Since Lambertville began this effort and became certified, some of our other local communities have also worked to do the same thing. New Britain in Pennsylvania, New Hope in Pennsylvania got certified in record time. There's some other communities in nearby to us in New Jersey that are also working on certification. We all kind of know each other, keep in touch, and try to help each other out when we can. So it's a really good thing to do. Work with your Native Plant Society chapters. They're happy to help. And native plant nurseries and volunteers. All of these are really important. Some of the highlights of Lambertville Goes Wild's efforts are that we just established ourselves as a group, as a volunteer group, in April of 2017. It took us a few weeks and months to establish our goals, get a team together, and our mission statement. Once we did, we went to the Environmental Commission for their support. We got the City Council to pass a resolution supporting our efforts in July. That wasn't too long after our start. We developed a website and a Facebook page. We're not really Instagram savvy, but we're working on it. But so whatever social media that you're comfortable with, use it. Our first kickoff event, was a native plant sale in September of that year. It was successful. And as I said, we've tried to do it about twice a year ever since. We worked with the public school to plan a garden and to have the students plan that garden. And then we began to offer programs, Gardens with Buzz, Learn to Landscape, more native plant sales. We've had monarch programs where we got someone in to talk about monarchs. Let's see. Oh, some of the other media things that we've done. We have a local radio station through DVR, which has a gardening program Wednesday nights at 5 to 6. And we've actually been on WDVR a number of times, initially promoting what we were doing, and since then talking about a number of different topics, all related to our program. We got somebody from the New Jersey Invasive Species Strike Team to come in and talk to people about what invasive species are and what they might do about them. Again, more programs offered by our group, What Do Butterflies Really Need? That's me. I got promoted. I'm the editor of Butterfly Gardener magazine, which is a publication of the North American Butterfly Association. And I use it as a platform to teach people about how important it is to have native plants to support butterflies. We have a preschool in town that approached us about planting a native plant garden there. So we worked with them to do that. There's a women's club in town, the Kalmia Club, that we were able to won in 2019. They have an annual garden tour in June, and that year all the gardens were certified community by the National Wildlife Federation. This year, we had a native plant sale the same day that they had their garden tour. We've done that a couple of times, but this time we actually were in the same location, which was kind of fun. And we achieved certification in July of 2019. With each of these events, we got more information out to people. We typically got a few people to certify their properties afterwards, after the events. All of these were beginning to change the culture of our city. Like I said, we worked with the Shade Tree Commission to update their list of recommended street trees. Almost all of them are native. One of our first parks projects was a riparian buffer at one of our parks at the south end of town. We planted, so that fall in 2019, we planted two native plant gardens, one at the south end of town, one at the north end of town. And we were able to do these with the partnership of some funding organizations, the Lower Delaware Weldon Scenic River Management Council for one, and the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions for the other. And in March of 2020, we actually received the Land Ethics Award from Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve, which we were very appreciative of. That was right before the pandemic began. The very day, it was probably the last public event before the shutdown of everything before the pandemic, but we were really excited to get that award from Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve. We worked on a revision to the landscape ordinance for Lambertville that was accepted and adopted by our planning board, which was great. It requires that for any projects that require planning board approval, at least 75% of the plants have to be native, and it prohibits invasive plants from being used. So partners on this were the Environmental Commission, the Planning Board, and the City Council. Everybody was on board to do this. We've actually changed the culture in Lambertville. Not everybody really knows, all of the native plants. They don't always know what's native and what's not native, but everybody understands that it's something important, that it's something that we're all working towards. So it's a really good thing. We continued to do plantings. There was a rain garden that had nothing in it but grass and some weeds that we renovated to have native plants, and it's now in its second summer. This is its third summer. In its second summer, it was already beautiful. It was great. We planted trees. We had, as I said before, a tree seedling giveaway that was, we got the trees from the state forestry division. We've had green fairs, partnering with groups within Lambertville. I noticed we now have an organization called, another volunteer organization, the Lambertville Nature Explorers, which is comprised of young families who, it was developed by two young mothers who wanted their kids to do something other than, and themselves to do something other than have their faces in screens all day long. So they're great partners too. Last spring, May of 2024, we actually planted a pollinator garden at City Hall because the mayor wanted to do it. So we did it. So it was great. We're working on more gardens now, more programs now. We're still doing native plant sales a couple times a year. There are 3 this year. Well, the next one is going to be in September, and it's going to be encompassed as a butterfly festival. We do green tips in our city's weekly e-newsletter, not every week, but when we have something to say. As I said, we're doing a lot in the parks in town. We haven't approved it yet, but we're probably going to do a native plant garden in one of the parks that's very heavily used. It doesn't have a garden and it needs it. We hope to do more tree planting there because it's actually in a place that's needs shade because the summer days are so hot. We just need more shade. And it's also helpful because that park gets flooded from flash flooding. So it'll help to manage the stormwater. We're also doing invasive plant removals with our volunteer park stewards who have been great. Again, we're planning a butterfly festival for mid-September. Our mayor has actually taken the mayor's monarch pledge, but we're hoping to feature that as part of the butterfly festival. And a brand new thing is that we were able to get a grant to fund a rebate program for our residents who replace some or all of their lawn with native plants. The rebate is $5 per square foot, or there's also a flat dollar amount to plant trees that are 2-inch caliber or greater. And the rebate has a max of $700, but we're trying to encourage people to replace lawn with native plants. It's so helpful for us to help manage stormwater, to reduce air temperatures, to reduce air pollution. And it provides at the same time, it provides wonderful habitat for wildlife. So why use native plants? Because they're essential to all life in the ecosystem in which they evolved, including humans. And I really like this because, we think of birds as eating fruits and seeds, and they absolutely do. In the fall, I look out my windows and I see them eating the fruit from dogwoods and from winterberry hollies and from black-haw viburnums. But here we have a little song sparrow surrounded by ripening black cherry fruit, which birds love, and as do other animals. But what does she have in her mouth but a caterpillar? So it just gives you a hint of how important insects are for birds, and native plants are essential for those insects. So what can you do? Use native plants in your own gardens. As I said in the very beginning, I live in a townhouse development. I don't have a big property, but I use native plants here. I'm lucky because my HOA has never been strict about, you have to only plant certain species in your gardens. They've never been dictatorial about that kind of thing. And where I live is an end unit that has a lot of shade, and I was able to get permission to plant native plants in the former lawn area, which died every year by July, next to my house. So it's been really great. Encourage others to use them. I keep hearing stories from people, including my neighbors, about how their gardens have influenced other people to use native plants and plant for wildlife. Even if it's just one wildlife species, just milkweed for monarchs, that's good. That's definitely a start. Avoid the use of pesticides and herbicides and even fertilizers. One of the wonderful things about native plants is they're not, demanding in terms of soil conditions. You want to match the right plant to the right place in terms of growing conditions, but you do not have to fertilize them. That, in fact, is counterproductive in many cases. Know and remove invasive species. Definitely important to do. So those are my recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions that there might be. That's pretty much it. Amy?
Back.
Hello.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mary Anne. That was such awesome information for people who are looking to, again, push forward and spread the good word, right?
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. So yes, we will move into questions. So if anyone has questions, you can populate those in the Q&A section and we will get started. So the first question that came in is, I know you spoke a little bit about grants, but specifically, how do you finance materials for your native plant sales?
The native plant sales, we actually invite plant vendors in and they bring their plants. It's not like Lambertville Goes Wild provides plants for people to buy. We invite plant vendors in and they sell the plants directly.
Oh, great. That's a smart idea.
It's worked pretty well for us so far.
Yeah. So I love that all the questions that are coming in are finance related. So So this is more about your planting projects. How were many of those planting projects funded?
Most of them were actually funded through grants. Let's see. We did some planting in the fall of 2019. There were 2 different parks in town, and we got grants from 2 different organizations. So you just need to look out there and see what is available in terms of grants. Sign on to newsletters. Like I get newsletters from the New Jersey DEP. They're always talking about grants that are available, but know what organizations support your local area. Some of the grants I spoke of would be specific to New Jersey. There's a group called ANJEC, the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, that offers small grants, but often enough for plants for a pollinator garden. Maybe not for the interpretive signs, but there are other ways to handle that. Like I recently learned, we haven't taken advantage of this yet, that we can get signs made really inexpensively through our county. We're in Hunterdon County, New Jersey. The county will make signs for us inexpensively. Sustainable Jersey is great if you live in New Jersey. They're a great source of funding. They're actually funded through some of the energy companies, like basically the energy companies. There's one for North Jersey and one for South Jersey. The Lower Delaware Wild and Scenic River Management Council supports communities on both sides of the river, so that's something that you can consider. But most of the time, they've been funded by grants. Sometimes what you might also do is suppose you're doing a school garden. It may be that the PTO, your parent-teacher organization, has some funding that they can provide to support you, either that they might have a fundraiser for you, or may have some funding that they typically use for grants for projects. Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve has a plant grant program that we've taken advantage of and been the lucky recipients of, that will award you up to 100 plants for pollinator gardens. So there are lots of opportunities. You just have to look for them. They might be a little different in Pennsylvania than in New Jersey, but believe me, they're out there. And again, if you're working with your environmental commission or working with your governing body, they may be aware of other grants that are available to you. Another really good partner for us has been the Sauerland Conservancy. They work to get grants. They're a nonprofit organization that works to protect and preserve and promote the Sauerland Mountain region, of which Lambertville is a part. We're at the very edge of it. And we, in this region, have lost a tremendous number of ash trees because of the emerald ash borer. Sauerland Conservancy has applied for and received a number of grants that they are able to use to buy trees, and they'll partner with municipalities to help plant those trees. And we've been the lucky partners of them for that too. So, see what else is there. And in Pennsylvania, there's a program that I haven't really quite gotten all the details on yet, but there's a program, I think, that will give you some level of financial incentives to replace lawn with native plants, but I don't know the details of that. You'll have to do your own research, sorry. So
I do feel like that came up in one of our presentations that talked about lawn conversions, and maybe my brain and or the resources that we've posted, I can try to find that and post it with this lecture. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. So the rebate program specifically, was that also a grant funded effort?
Yes, that we were just awarded a grant in early June by Sustainable Jersey. It's a $20,000 grant. When the money is gone, that's it. But we felt it was important to help people to understand just how important it is to replace lawn with native plants. Again, Lambertville is a town that's really subject to flooding. So the native plants are so important for all the wildlife, but it turns out they're really important for us too. I'm not subject to flooding. I live uphill, but so much of Lambertville is subject to flooding. And the more that those of us uphill plant, the more we replace lawn with native plants, it helps to make our whole community safer. So we're really promoting that. But yeah, is funded by a grant. We have until November of 2026 to spend the grant. And so I'm hoping we're able to do that. Like I said, we've capped it at $700 per resident. And it's $5 a square foot and a flat rate. I think it's $100 for a larger tree.
Okay.
So
That's awesome.
Hope so.
This question is about invasive plants.
Yeah.
That invasive plants seem to be thriving this summer.
Yeah.
How have you guys tackled them? And do you have any recommendations for sources for how to address them and or identify them?
There are so many questions here. How have we addressed them? One of the things, so when I started all this, like 6 or 7 years ago, or 8 years ago, I guess, I wasn't quite sure how we were going to, maintain the gardens we were planting. And now I'm also responsible for some of the natural areas that we have. And I had an early fantasy that maybe our DPW group could do it, or that we could, have a budget to pay people to do it. No. So volunteers is the way that we're maintaining the gardens that we planted, and the way that we're managing our natural areas to try to also manage invasive species. So it's fruit labor with volunteers. We've chosen in Lambertville not to use herbicides. And I won't say we would never ever do it, but so far we haven't had to resort to it. So that's great. One of the things I'm trying to do with planting is to plant in areas where we have problems with particular invasive species, like one of my personal nemesis is mugwort. And which has a really aggressive root system. But it turns out there's some native plants that have root systems that can compete with it. So I'm trying to do more of that to try to tamp down the aggressiveness of some of the invasive species that we have. So that was a multi-part question. Oh, where can you learn more? Well, once a year, Boneso Wildflower Preserve offers a invasive species class, identification and management. I teach that. Has been in June the last couple of years, so you missed it for this year, but that's one place. New Jersey has an organization called the New Jersey Invasive Species Strike Team, and on both sides of the river, we're subject to pretty much the same invasive species. Their website has pretty good information, so it's you can just Google New Jersey Invasive Species Strike Team, or just the initials will typically get it for you. So they're a good source of information. Probably in Pennsylvania, the DCNR website would be a good source of additional information for identifying invasive species. There are other websites like invasives.org that are good sources of information. And yes, I agree. They've been really super aggressive this year. Oriental bittersweet in particular, man, I see it everywhere. It comes out pretty easily when it's small, but when it's bigger, I usually just end up snipping it at the base of the plant. Did I get everything? Because that was a multi-part question. Did I?
You did. You did great, Mary Anne. Thank you so much.
Okay.
This person is asking, what is the date for the Lambertville Butterfly Festival in September?
Oh, it's September 13th. It's a Saturday. And the plan is to have it at Ely Park. And we have not yet reserved it, but I'm hoping to reserve the all-purpose room in the elementary school, which is right next door, just in case of bad weather. So it's a rain or shine event. We're hoping it's inside in case of rain, but September 13th, be there.
Awesome. And this person picked up on the fact that you didn't say the plant name of the one that has aggressive roots that works against mugwort, and would like to know what is that plant you're planting?
Well, one that I've had really good luck with is short-tooth mountain mint, Pycnium muticum, and probably any of the mountain mints would work really, really well. I think any of the mountain mints would work really well. Some of the grasses would probably also compete pretty well. In this one garden where mugwort is a particular problem, wild bergamot is also doing quite well against it. So, you just have to experiment a little bit. Wild senna is a plant I'm just really fond of for numerous reasons that would take several minutes for me to explain, and you probably don't want to listen to it. That's a topic for another time. Anyway, that plant can reproduce pretty well also, mostly through seeds. Not sure if it's also a root system thing, but even common milkweed may. It did not do well in this particular garden where we have the mugwort issue, but I think it may just be an issue with that particular location. But it also has a pretty good root system and can spread. So those are just some ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for shade gardens, one of the things that competes well with garlic mustard is golden ragwort, which is a spring bloomer. So you could consider that. That actually works well in the sun or shade. So consider it for, other possible locations.
Yes, that is a tough plant.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. If there's any other questions from the group, please put them. I do have one thing that just kind of popped into my mind as you were talking, was, the installations that you're doing and the plants that you're adding. I'm assuming that that's all Lambertville city property. And kind of how does that work from that maintenance standpoint? Are you guys involved with like public works and grounds crews for the city, or is kind of maintenance up to your organization?
So, I have a short attention span, so I've gotten involved in so many things. And one of them is I'm now chair of Parks and Rec. So there's a lot of crossover and blending between Lambertville Goes Wild and the Parks and Rec Commission. So it's easy for me to get approval to do the planting. And what I have found is the most successful for doing maintenance is we don't have a big Department of Public Works. I mean, they're great. Like, if we remove if we have debris for them to pick up, they'll come pick it up. But if we have trees down on the nature trail, they'll try to get to it as soon as they can. But like weeding, nah, they just don't have the resources for that. We also don't have the budget to pay somebody to do that. So it is up to volunteers, usually led by, me or other people who are knowledgeable about what plant is what. And one of the things that works well when you're using the volunteers and you're just teaching people is, okay, today we're going after mugwort in this garden right here. And then if you have a little extra time, well, we might get a few of these other little things here. There's an oriental bittersweet, let me get that one. But, to focus on a single species, it's easy to tell people, look for this plant. We're removing this plant anywhere that it shows up. Volunteers, basically, to answer your question. And it's really, I didn't want it to be a Lambertville Goes Wild thing because we're not a city official thing. So I started the park stewards, which are associated with the Parks and Rec Commission, because I want it to be a city obligation and a city thing. And that's the only way I can do it. We don't have financing to do it any other way.
Wonderful. Thank you for answering that. All right. Well, Mary Anne, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And there's lots of wonderful chat comments coming in about your wonderful presentation and how inspiring this information was for people. So again, thank you for being with us and contributing to our Arbo-READ-um celebration, as well as our Third Thursday lecture. So again, thank you so much. And for everyone who's out there listening, we have our next Third Thursday lecture on August 21st. And we're going to be diving into the world of fungal ecology in the greater Philadelphia region. So hopefully you guys can join us then. And Mary Anne, thank you again for being with us tonight.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. My pleasure.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye.